Bitcoin reserve under consideration, says Trump's crypto czar. David Sachs is who we're referencing here as the crypto czar, who was appointed as the White House AI and crypto czar by President Trump, and he has publicly described Bitcoin as an excellent store of value and suggested the potential establishment of a U.S. Bitcoin reserve. This has sparked considerable discussion amongst crypto enthusiasts and policymakers, indicating a possible shift in U.S. cryptocurrency policy towards integration and regulation. We've talked a lot recently about the importance of regulation so that the sheep will follow and not be fearful. And we're seeing, that this will hopefully enable a lot of innovation within the space as regulation is formed that is very clear surrounding it within the United States. And with that innovation, of course, comes new money into the ecosystem, adding liquidity to all of the markets and thereby kind of raising all of the ships. Now, sometimes those ships aren't going to raise quite as high as they have in the past, which we've been talking a little bit about here recently. I was disappointed earlier this week when we were hearing about essentially the digital, what was that called again? I'm already blanking, but it was essentially the digital reserve. It wasn't a reserve, strategic anyways, investment that was signed by Trump that effectively was more leaning towards basically purchasing stocks in companies. Like TikTok was the only one actually mentioned in that particular piece of legislation. And I wasn't a big fan of that. I still am not. And I was scared that we weren't even going to see any Bitcoin mentioned, but now we are seeing specifically US Bitcoin Reserve mentioned. And here is a little video of him talking about it.
Order in the first week that it's the policy of his administration to support the responsible growth and use of digital assets, blockchain technology, and related technologies across all sectors of the economy. And he established an executive branch working
sovereign wealth
digital
fund.
Assets, which includes
that's what it was.
Secretary Besson at Treasury, Secretary Noem, soon to be confirmed Attorney General Bondi, Secretary Letnick at Commerce, and all the other key administration officials that have an equity in crypto. And similarly, the SEC has set up a crypto task force led by Hester Peirce, which is also looking at this issue. And together, our objective is to accomplish the task the president assigned for us in his EO, which is to propose a federal regulatory framework governing the issuance and operation of digital assets, including stablecoins, in the United States.
We've already heard this one,
I've talked
right?
to many founders over the past few years.
I don't think this mentions specifically anything about Bitcoin.
From Washington,
maybe he does.
Regulatory clarity. They just want to know what the rules of the road are so they can abide by them. We're coming off, frankly, 4 years of arbitrary prosecution and persecution of crypto companies where the SEC wouldn't tell founders what the rules were, but then they would prosecute them. And many founders have even told me stories of being debanked personally just because they had...
Yeah, and we definitely read the transcript from this on Monday. So if you guys are interested, go back to Monday's podcast, and there's also a clip of this in particular. I was more looking for the Bitcoin Reserve video. Maybe this will be it.
David, recast for us, if you will, the value of Bitcoin specifically, cryptocurrency and blockchain technology in general. As we're now in the Trump administration era, we're in the back half of the 2020s. Back 5 years ago plus, there was talks about, using it as a means of buying things. Now it's more about the store of value and the way, perhaps hedge against inflation in various currencies. What do you see as the real value and the reason why the United States government should be paying so much attention to it?
Well, I think there's a few different aspects here when you're talking about digital aspects. So first of all, you got Bitcoin. It was the first digital currency, and it's the original. It's the strongest one. In the parlance of the industry, it's the most lindy, meaning it's been around for over a dozen years now. No one's ever hacked it. No one's ever cracked the security around it. And so it is an excellent store of value. So that would be point number one. Bitcoin is run on, as you know, a blockchain. It's basically a distributed ledger
which is essentially a form of decentralized computing. And that platform can be used to create a lot of other types of products. And so that would be sort of technology area number 2, is all the innovation that can be built on top of blockchains. And then...
Okay. So I guess that mentions it a little bit. I thought we were going to get more out of it. Let's see. That's only 49 seconds here.
That's on the table here. What goes into that process? Is that something that would be standalone, or is that something that could potentially be tucked into,
this is
say,
what I
a
want to
sovereign
know.
wealth fund, which has been the speculation today on the heels of that executive order?
I guess it's possible that the sovereign wealth fund could decide that they want to make Bitcoin or digital assets part of its portfolio. You're going to have to ask the incoming Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, about that. The item that President Trump asked our working group on digital assets to study is whether it's feasible to create either a Bitcoin reserve or some sort of digital asset.
So that would be a
stockpile.
separate reserve.
So we're going to be
it
looking at
sounds
that
like.
question. We haven't committed yet to doing it.
So basically, that could be a portion of the sovereign wealth fund, but this discussion, as far as a Bitcoin reserve, would be a separate reserve in this particular scenario. It sounded like to me, at least right now, the only asset that we can be confirmed of in the sovereign wealth fund is shares in TikTok, which I disagree with vehemently. But, you know, that's, I mean, obviously they kind of cast a big old net for the sovereign wealth fund. I mean, it can include stocks, it can include, you know, bonds, other commodities, you know, a bunch of digital assets. So I think that's going to be separate, though, is what it sounds like to me. And I suppose the distinction would be a reserve versus a wealth fund. And how those will be leveraged is really going to be probably where the distinction comes in. And I'm not sure what those leverages will be. Either way, I mean, the Trojan horse is trucking along, especially with the Trump administration, and governments around the world, including state governments, are starting, you know, to look at protecting their wealth within Bitcoin. And that does mean eventually that, well, since there's only so much Bitcoin, well, the price has to increase. You compound those factors with things like inflation, and it's kind of game over. The question is of course, can you fully back? Would it be possible in any scenario to fully back the dollar by Bitcoin, whether that's based on sats or something along those lines, and go back to something along the lines of a gold standard, but with sats, you know? Is that a possibility? I mean, I think so. Is that what they're actually going to do? I don't think so. I think right now, depending on what Doge does with, you know, Elon Musk looking into everything, which we'll talk about here in just a second, I don't foresee the Federal Reserve wanting to give up the power of devaluing the US dollar and destroying individuals' retirement for their own profit. You know, there's just so much money in that for the top 1%. I think that's going to be a hard fight across the board. Is it possible? Sure. We've seen a lot of crazy stuff happen over the past couple weeks since inauguration on January 20th. But I think it's up in the air right now. Good. I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. If you would like to see more from this particular episode, take a look up here. Don't forget to also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me directly, you can go to sonofatech.locals.com and become a member. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday.